hello everyone, and welcome to the NFL version of Proline. I'm John Creighton in Las Vegas, joined by Vegas experts Harvard Barnhart and Zach Simony. We're going to take a look at Week 17. It's the final week of the NFL regular season, gentlemen. I can't believe it. It seems like it just started, but January is right around the corner. It's going to be cold. We got playoff action. So let's start off with some playoff expectations for a couple of teams, and you can go in either direction. Harvard, what do you see for January?
Well, first of all, let me say something about this last week. It was incredible. You know, did you realize that Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, these are all your premier quarterbacks going into Week 16 last week, and all of them lost. I mean, that is what a all-star cast of characters that every one of them lost. Now, if you're losing in Week 16 or coming up in, well, let's don't count this week, because some teams might rest players. But, that's not really, that's not the momentum you look for heading into the playoffs when that many great quarterbacks lose their game. When I look at the AFC, New England, they're going to get everybody's thing. But, I want to tell you about two sleepers that you probably know, both the wild card teams, Kansas City and the New York Jets. Those two teams, they've got the momentum. And that's what you look for when you're going into the playoffs, momentum. Now, did they have to win? Yeah, maybe that's what. So they had the talent and they had the desire, and then they got the results. Cincinnati, Texas, Houston Texans, and Denver, I don't give them much of a chance at all. So going into the AFC, I really think in the championship game it'll be New England playing Kansas City, unless they got some kind of, because of the wild card, who knows, maybe Kansas City has to meet New England. We don't have that matchups yet because I think that if the Jets lose, Pittsburgh could get in or something like that. So it's not really settled, but I think Kansas City could go all the way. On the other side of the coin in the NFC, I think Washington's out, Green Bay's out, Minnesota, and they could be because they got a lot of great, they have so many avenues to win. Maybe Minnesota, Carolina, certainly they have to be looked at. Arizona is my team. In fact, I think we had this conversation about 6-7 weeks ago, and I said Arizona, put a check mark by them all the way through. And then Seattle, I don't think they have a shot. So if you had to ask me right now who's going to be the world champions, it's got to be Super Bowl, whatever it is, 50, Arizona Cardinals.
Well, and those quarterbacks you mentioned may have lost this weekend, but the Vegas Sportsbooks actually won. They were coming off a terrible weekend, but with so many dogs covering, they bounced back very nice. So I'm happy with that.
Why are you happy with that?
Big time.
I'm never happy that the sportsbooks win. Screw them. I love their money.
Well, you're on Arizona, and I know, Zach, for a while you were looking at Green Bay as a title run here. You still on them?
Yeah, I still think they're the best value team. I mean, record-wise, I don't know what their future value is right now, but obviously Carolina and Arizona have the stronghold in that NFC. In Seattle, they're still going to have high value, so you're probably going to look at neck-and-neck third and fourth place value on the Green Bay Packers for a future odds, so I'll still take that. And what I saw, obviously, Aaron Rodgers was struggling with the QB pressure and whatnot, so that's something they can adjust, and I know they'll face each other again. And sometimes you see it happen a lot in basketball where teams will play each other and down the road. So in that game, that first game, you might not see everything that they have to offer. And I don't think Green Bay, that was one of the most simplistic games that I've seen from Green Bay in a long time. They barely ran the ball. Aaron Rodgers struggled. I heard a stat that Aaron Rodgers has been only fumbled the ball for a return touchdown 3 times in his career, and all 3 were against Arizona with the game in the playoffs a few years back, and then the 2 on Sunday. So I think there's high value on Green Bay if that matchup reoccurs in the playoffs. And I think they'll win that game if they play Arizona again. With that being said, in the AFC, that conference is just a mess right now. You don't know what's going on with quarterback for Denver Broncos. Probably going to be Brock Osweiler. Cincinnati, they have an injury now with McCarron. They might be starting the third stringer next week in Simeon. And then you got the Houston Texans who are probably going to be in the playoffs with Brian Hoyer still status unknown with a concussion. And then you have teams like the Jets and Kansas City. Kansas City, they've played San Diego and Oakland twice the past, or they're going to play Oakland this weekend, but they played both those teams twice in the last 8 weeks, and then they've played a string of backups, playing Baltimore, playing Cleveland Browns, so they play a lot of backups, so their value is unknown as well. So, I mean, it's pretty much that conference. I think you can just hand to the New England Patriots. Maybe they struggle in one game, but they'll find a way to win it.
All right, yeah, I'll take a look at two teams that may be in for early exits. One would be the Patriots, and I would put a question mark next to them because they are going to probably be the number one seed and the team to beat them. But they have so many injuries to that offensive line that I have some major concerns with this team. If they just lost Vollmer in a recent game, and he was the one guy on that line, the last guy that they really couldn't afford to lose. Now he's injured. They go into this playoff game even with 2 weeks with a terrible offensive line and the bad wide receivers that they have with the injuries to them. They're going to have major problems. I can see them not even winning a playoff game. The game that they just played against the Jets, the offensive game plan was so vanilla. It was really focused on let's not get Tom Brady killed as opposed to let's, doing what we like to do best. And that was because of the bad offensive line. If they do that same game plan, conservative ball control in the postseason, I don't think they win any playoff games. On the other hand, if they do have the bye week to get healthy on the line and get something like Julie Edelman back, I don't think you'll see that conservative. I think right from the bat, you'll see them spread the field and they'll be attacking on offense. However, if they come out conservative, there's a really bad sign with all the injuries. Second team would be Carolina. Number one seed here, likely in the postseason. I can see them getting knocked off. First of all, there's a couple of tough teams, Arizona and Seattle, that they would be facing. Tough defensive matchups for them. And I took a look back at last year's playoffs. They played Arizona without one of their quarterbacks. Remember the Cardinals last year were down to their fourth-string quarterback. They destroyed Arizona 27-16, but the yardage was 386-78. They embarrassed the Cardinals. So you can look at two ways. You can say Carolina's the better team and they should steamroll, or you can look at it and say, can you imagine if you're an Arizona Cardinal and Bruce Arians shows the game film and the stats and look what these guys did to us in a rematch. Let's go out there and get some revenge. And then there's the Seattle potential matchup. Seattle handled this Carolina team in the playoffs last year, beat them 31-17. At one point it was 31-10. Carolina had 3 turnovers in the game, 2 picks from Cam Newton. I would not be shocked to see that happen again, not just against Seattle, but other teams. I can see Carolina being a number one seed going down. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of the games going on Sunday. First one is really the NFC North championship game here. Vikings at Packers. You got the two teams 10-5. Minnesota heading to Green Bay. The early line is Green Bay 3.5, total of 47.5. The weather in Wisconsin, 29 degrees, although sunny, and hey, I guess you can call this a revenge game too. They just played in Week 10 in Minnesota. A lot of people in Vegas were heavy on the Vikings, and the Packers creamed them 30-13. Vikings have been covering games though, 21-7 spread run. They got a winning road record. They come off a rout over the Giants. They really have everything you need to advance in the postseason, keyed by a running game and great defense. So Harvard, the kids from Minnesota, they're ready to step up and finally win a big game.
I think they crush Green Bay this week.
Crush
them. I tell you what, first of all, they're finally healthy. Second of all, when you look for a game like this, you need a go-to guy. They have Adrian Peterson. He's their go-to guy. He's proved it quietly this year. 1,400 yards, 4.6 yards per carry. Jerick McKinnon, he's a guy that he came out of somewhere, nowhere, who knows where he's come from. But let me tell you, this guy has really taken the pressure off Adrian Peterson. They've got 3 great tight ends for Bridgewater to throw to. They got 2 fullbacks that can come out and they either block or they can catch screen passes. Anthony Barr and Linval Joseph, they're back and they're healthy on their defense. And I don't think they fear anybody, and they believe in themselves, and they believe they can take down this team. Aaron Rodgers, you might want to talk about what happened last week in Arizona. I don't even look at that game as anything different than what he's been doing all year long. 58% passing for the entire year. I mean, you know what? When I throw the ball to my grandkids, I complete more than 58%. Their team is number 28 in passing for the season, not just for last week's game. But last week he had 151 yards against Arizona, 178 total net yards. He didn't know who to throw it to, who's going to block, a bad offensive line. I don't think their running game is like a go-to guy. I think they have it by committee, 2 or 3 guys, which means you really don't have that much. Their defense is very suspect. This Minnesota team, they're going to come to play, and they're going to come to win, and they're going to get this title game.
All right, well, Aaron Rodgers does have rather sizzling overall numbers, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. However, you wouldn't know it by looking at some of their offensive stats, as you just mentioned, below average in yards, total yards, and so forth. And they come off that embarrassment at Arizona, 38-8, blowout loss, 178 total yards. They are very good at home, 11-5-1 against the spread. They're dynamite in the division play, 41-19 against the spread. So, Zach, what it comes down to is which Packer team is going to show up here.
Yeah, I'm not going to fault Green Bay for that loss. There was a lot of turnovers. I mean, 3 in a row in a game that could have been 10-7 at halftime if Aaron Rodgers would have protected that ball with under 2 minutes to go after that Carson Palmer interception. So we have that type of things occurring on the road in Arizona with a team that's been 15-2 or 15-3 under Carson Palmer and Bruce Arians at home. You've got to really look at that with a grain of salt and just move on. They played a good game, and they beat the Packers. But on the season, Green Bay's played close games. They've either won the games or they've found a way to lose. But their only 2 bad games this year were Denver Sunday night and Arizona last week. So they've been in all the other games with chances to win. And I think if you look back at that game against the Vikings, Aaron Rodgers toyed with that secondary with a 0 running game. So he can get it done even with a bad offensive line. With that being said, I think Teddy Bridgewater is getting a little bit more comfortable. And Minnesota is going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs, like Hollis said. They still have that top running back. Defense average to below average, but they're better on offense than people think. So I think this weekend you can look at this as a total play. I know I don't give out totals very often, but this one I think you can take the over. I think Aaron Rodgers responds strong, and the Vikings keep their offense going, which should be a good game. And you'll have this total solidified by the end of the third quarter, and then just watch a good fourth quarter. I don't know who will win, but yeah, we'll take the total and the over.
Okay, well, I will make it 3 separate picks on this one. I'll have to go with the home team simply because I've seen Minnesota get behinds in games, and they can struggle trying to come back with Bridgewater. He's only 23 years old, 14 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and now you got a bounce-back spot. Minnesota has nothing to prove after blowing out a Giants team that was disinterested last week. Green Bay, boy, they've got to be licking their wounds after that embarrassing national TV game. And, of course, they play so much better at home. They went to Minnesota and whipped this team a couple weeks ago. That's another reason I'm hesitant to back the Vikings, because they had 2 step-up games we saw recently against Seattle, against Green Bay, and they could not step up at all against superior defensive teams, as well as trying to come back. But they're also 1-5 against the spread here in Green Bay. So this is a short number on the home team. I'll back the Packers in this one.